Stewart Mandel is the editor-in-chief of theathletic.com's college football coverage. Came on the show last year. Welcome back to the Heisman Trophy podcast, Stu.
Thanks, Chris.
You know, you wrote a piece in The Athletic this week where you asked who will fill all these top-tier coaching jobs, and it got me to thinking about the coaching market and how for much of the last 20 years or so, we've seen this escalating arms race in college football, and to go with it, these ever-burgeoning coaching salaries. And now the question I have in my head is, are we seeing this coaching market finally turn into a bubble that is about to pop? What do you think?
It never does, though, right? You always think, we thought with COVID, okay, well, then they're going to have to start, spending their money more wisely. Nope. There are actually several coaches that got fired and bought out in that cycle. And then, you would think all of these stories about huge buyouts and guaranteed contracts, Brian Kelly, James Franklin, would deter other people from doing the same. Nope. When Indiana did its new contract with Curt Cignetti, I believe it is 100% fully guaranteed. Matt Rule just got an extension from Nebraska, so that assures that his buyout is now $70 million. So I've yet to see this thing correct itself.
Fair enough. Now, but also it could be that they just haven't, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Like maybe the bubble is still inflating, but because I see it, you're talking about all these jobs that are available, and there's, like three arguably really elite jobs, and then there's a bunch of really good jobs elsewhere, like schools that might typically get a rising star. And it doesn't seem like the supply of coaches is there to meet the demand.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that with the number of Power 4 jobs, and by the way, they're all good Power 4 jobs in their own right. People might say, "Oh, UCLA is a disaster," but you're still in the Big Ten. Like, it's relative to where the coach is now. And there's going to be more. I would assume Wisconsin will open, and a few others. And then, of course, there's a domino effect. And no, there are not enough proven coaches out there. And I think what I've brought up over and over again is the fact that Lane Kiffin has emerged as the number one most coveted guy in this market tells you something, because, yes, Lane Kiffin, very good coach, has brought Ole Miss to success they haven't really ever experienced in the history of that school. But at the same time, he hasn't taken them to the playoff yet. As we know, he was very publicly fired from 3 different coaching stops earlier in his career. So, and he's about to get a huge raise from somebody. Either he's going to get another job, or Ole Miss is going to have to pay up to keep him. So that should tell you, like, okay, well, if he's the number one guy on the list, who else is available out there? Now, if you can manage to not get caught up in hiring the biggest name, there's a lot of great group of 5 coaches out there. There's a lot of good FCS coaches. And that's where, if this cycle of huge buyouts is ever going to end, if somebody, for instance, wants to hire Ryan Silverfield from Memphis, I promise you he will come for a lot cheaper than, if you tried to hire Matt Rule away from Nebraska. You don't have to pay him $9 million a year. If you pay him $6 million a year, or if it's less of a guarantee, he will still come to your Power 4 job. But the agents, the Jimmy Sextons of the world, they do such a good job of outmaneuvering the schools and convincing them to give these crazy contracts.
That's a good point. It seems to me like there's as much uncertainty as I've ever seen it when it comes to determining who will be a good coaching hire. We've seen coaching stars who've thrived in the before times kind of struggle. Guys like Dabo Swinney, Lincoln Riley, Brian Kelly, Chip Kelly. These are guys that were like superstars, like before COVID, before all the big changes. And we've seen coaches who are good at managing programs to great success, like Ryan Day and Dan Lanning and Marcus Freeman. And we've seen a few superstars leave the profession, like Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. And some of that's just age and some of that's other reasons. But where is that group of up-and-coming coaches who are going to be this generation's superstars? Where are the new Sabans and the new Meyers? Like, we had this great kind of group of up-and-comers earlier in the mid-2000 first decade of the century, and these guys really dominated the sport for the next 15 years. Like, where is this group going to come from?
Yeah, the challenge is, I'm sure the next Nick Saban or whoever, Urban Meyer, is somebody's defensive coordinator right now. But how do you know? How do you know if a defensive coordinator is truly ready for that job or not?
Yeah.
One thing I would just say is, I think what we've seen over the last few years is obviously the sport has changed completely. It's almost a completely different sport than it was 4 years ago with the NIL and transfer portal, more parity. And the coaches who you've heard complain about it the most are the ones that are now have been fired or might soon get fired. I mean, Brian Kelly was a big complainer about it. Dabo is obviously a big complainer about it. He's struggling, and so on down the line. The guys who never just maybe privately they felt that way, but they just embraced it. Dan Lanning, Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. Curt Cignetti is not of that younger generation, but he has used the transfer portal as well as anybody
Mm,
in terms of building his roster at Indiana.
yeah.
So whoever that person is that you are saying is the next star is going to be somebody who embraces the way college football is today, rather than sitting around and complaining about how it used to be.
Yeah. Well, the first 2 decades of this century, we also saw a lot of radical changes in offensive football. And now there seems to be kind of a homogenization happening. Almost everyone runs some version of the same spread. And like the big innovation, the big innovative wrinkle right now is these teams adding extra tight ends and H-backs, kind of going back to some of the old stuff. It's like not really groundbreaking stuff. Like the college game used to be a font of creativity. And now, and I'm thinking maybe due to the huge influx of cash, there's more at stake. There's more risk aversion, and so they're looking for more game managers and program managers rather than coaches who will go out there and be more risky with all that investment going on. What do you think of that
Yeah.
idea?
No, it is probably not a great time right now for innovation in college football on the field. Maybe everybody's just so focused on off the field, but there's a few guys. I mean, I think what Navy is doing under Brian Newberry and their offensive coordinator, they've taken the triple option and turned it into something completely different.
Mm,
Triple option is still part of it, but I mean, Navy passes the ball a lot now, and I'm talking like drop back passing.
yeah,
It's really fun to watch their offense. I think Willie Fritz, who's succeeded everywhere he's been and is Houston now, is very innovative. And there's other guys that fit that description as well. But
yeah,
it does seem like, and it's a good point you raise, right? Like the days of like, well, we're going to hire Urban Meyer or Chip Kelly or somebody from their tree to come run their offense. Now it's more who who's going to come in and get us the best portal class,
yeah.
right?
There are all kinds of changes happening, as we know. But what do you think about the idea that the old concept of this big time head football coach, this Olympian figure dominating a program, is kind of dying? That you kind of alluded to it earlier, that we're getting to a more technocratic Moneyball approach where you don't have to spend 12 million, you can spend 6 million, spend that money elsewhere, get a version of the same result. Is that something that could be a trend that develops as a result of all this churn that's going on?
I mean, a great cautionary tale right now is North Carolina, because, it came out after the fact. Bubba Cunningham, the AD there, did not want to hire Bill Belichick. It wasn't even his search. These board of trustees members hijacked the search, and his plan was going to be to hire somebody like John Summerall, somebody like Jeff Monken at Army, a really good proven college coach who would come for a decent, modest salary, and they would take the money and spend it on the roster. And instead, they ended up with a coach who they're paying $10 million a year to, guaranteed, who is then saying, "Oh, we're going to go out and we're so good at evaluation. Like we won Super Bowls. We're so much better at evaluating people that we'll be able to get guys on the cheap." And I think they found out the hard way this first year that doesn't work.
Yeah, and of course the recent news about Louisiana Governor Landry butting into the LSU coaching hire process, inserting himself. I don't know how that's going to shake out. Maybe you have some better sources on what's really going on there, or if that's just a bunch of bluster. But it seems to me like it portends a potentially another unforeseen trend that could happen going
Well,
forward.
Louisiana is very unique in its history of governors meddling in LSU football. So I don't know that that's going to be a trend, but I think it's another example, much like the USC one that I just raised, where there's just no alignment. There's dysfunction in the leadership. And people want to win so badly in football, and I understand it. They want prestige for their university, but it takes more than just a great coach. It takes everybody from the president on down being in alignment. And LSU is the furthest thing from it. I mean, there's just a total leadership void there right now. And the governor says he's not going to be hiring the next coach. Okay. But the governor appoints the people on the board of supervisors who he says are going to hire the next coach.
Yeah.
So we wish them well.
Okay, we'll just wait till Governor Tuberville hires the next Auburn coach in next year.
That's true. Yeah.
And then you mentioned earlier the lower ranks of football. I'm kind of intrigued by it. I recently talked to Tony Annese, the head coach of Ferris State, and they've won 3 of the last 4 titles. They're just rolling down there in Division II. Every year they've got like six to 8 guys going to the FBS level and doing pretty well. Could that be a new area to mine that is also quite affordable? Like we mentioned earlier, why pay a big name coach $12 million for what amounts to nice packaging? Well, you can go get the generic product for much less instead of the brand name and use the money for something else.
I think that I wrote about this a couple of years ago, but if you were to look, the hit rate on, I mean, look, it's no perfect science, right? Nobody truly knows if a coach is going to succeed. But if you look at the hit rate for FCS coaches that moved up versus any other previous resume, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. Ohio State hired Jim Tressel from FCS and he won a national championship. Yeah. Chris Kleiman is doing pretty well at Kansas State, having come from North Dakota State. And then you've just got guys who have, Lance Leipold worked at Division III. Curt Cignetti worked at Division II and then FCS for a long time. Mm-hmm. Kalen DeBoer, NAIA. Mm-hmm. Kalen DeBoer at one point.
Yeah.
If you can win, you can win. And so I feel like it's actually a really smart play to go and get a really good FCS coach.
And you're looking at coaches who are used to penny pinching, who are used to doing more with less, and who don't approach everything with this, throw money at the situation, right?
And they have, I just think if you're going to get somebody to go to a Power 5 job, and it's such a big job that encompasses so many different things that have nothing to do, frankly, with X and O's, having somebody who has that experience is huge. Now, it's not lost on me that some of the head coaches of the best teams in the country right now were coordinators, right? Mm-hmm. Ryan Day was hired or promoted. Marcus Freeman was promoted. Those guys were, Dan Lanning was a DC. So it's not like that doesn't work too. I will say what a lot of those guys have in common is they took over programs that were kind of already doing pretty darn well, right?
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley, when he took over Oklahoma, it's a lot harder when you're rebuilding a program somewhere.
And also,
I think that's where
it's also a completely different situation than it was a few years ago, right? So we don't really have a track record outside of Cignetti, who took a program from nothing and built it up in this environment. He's probably the only one to really show that level of success that you can do at Indiana. It's like Ohio State. When the change is happening, some of these places were in better shape than others, and so with the easier transition. But I feel like Indiana just shows the way for all these other mid-level. I don't want to say mid-level, but power schools that have a chance to just spend wisely and
it may turn out that Curt Cignetti is a unicorn. He certainly is leading a resurgence like we've never seen. But I think the lesson to be learned from Indiana is just hire the best coach. Don't worry about are they going to win the press conference? Though ironically, he did end up winning the press conference with his Google line. But don't worry on getting the biggest name or getting somebody from the Nick Saban tree, although I guess technically he is. All the kind of unimportant things that ADs often latch onto in the coaching search. Ties to the area, right? They have to be so anyway, the point is just hire the best coach. Can you imagine if when LSU came open last time, when they hired Brian Kelly, if they had said, we're hiring Curt Cignetti, oh boy, fans there would have been like, who? You're hiring the James Madison coach to come here? Are you kidding me?
Right.
So they don't do it because they know what their reaction is going to be. And sometimes that just guy is, they're risk averse, but sometimes that guy is the best guy for the job.
Yeah. Well, Stu Mandel of theathletic.com, editor-in-chief, great content over there on college football. You can find him at SL Mandel at Blue Sky. Thanks, Stu, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.